Alright y'all, time for a HOI4 classic, the schizo-political focus tree. I rummaged through the Kaiserredux content until I found an especially appealing path. As Liberia, you can get Hoover in charge and retake control of America after the Civil War, so that's what we're gonna do today. It's a very challenging path since you're Liberia, who starts with barely any industry, manpower, or tech. This is gonna be a pretty difficult path, but I'm also gonna throw in the better AI mod to truly put my HOI4 skills to the test, and because the more I suffer, the more y'all seem to like the videos. Anyways, here I go. So the lore, pretty much the same as in real life. Free black citizens from America got land here to set up a nation for freed slaves in the Americas. They did not get along with the natives, so they set up a government where only they could be in charge. Their economy wasn't great, but what little they had took a huge hit after the scramble for Africa, since every major country except for Germany didn't care to trade with them anymore. So when World War I happened and Germany couldn't trade with them anymore, it was bleak. The only way they could recover afterwards was by selling off a bunch of land for rubber production to Firestone Rubber and Tires. When Firestone set up the rubber plantations, the company struggled to find workers since most people worked in subsistence farming. So they and the Liberian government came up with some aggressive recruitment strategies. Come 1936, we have a nation ruled by a tyrannical minority with an economy controlled by a foreign business that's run on slave labor. A Michelin-level recipe for disaster, and Black Monday is here to turn up the heat. Liberia is going to need a bailout to deal with this, and we have several options to turn to. The US, Germany, and Firestone, who really shouldn't have money right now, but we're not going to question it. We take their money and sell out our economy in ways that weren't thought of being possible before. This attracts an unexpected guest, Gerald Ford, who is here to take charge of the Liberian Navy of one borrowed US battleship. The economy is soon back to normal, but another problem eventually pops up. Word gets out internationally about Firestone's use of slave labor and the Liberian government's enabling of that practice. Using slaves in the big 1936 is, as they say, not a good look, and King's government is being told it needs to go. However, King's party decides that they aren't going anywhere, to the dismay of many citizens who are now organizing a revolt. With the situation looking unstable, Harvey Firestone, looking to protect his assets, gets a team of mercenaries together to coup the government. And now, the country of Liberia is completely in Firestone's hands. We can now move forward to our next step in our focus tree to attract more American migration. While getting a significant amount of Americans to move to Liberia might seem like an unattainable goal, the Second American Civil War knocks down an impossible task to an Herculean one. We have some American refugees sailing to our shores, and with the approval of the Christie Plan, we will attract many more. For the next few months, Liberia puts out ads, trying to get more people to come over, and it is showing some good results. Eventually, we attract a very special guest. Herbert Hoover has arrived on our shores, and although he made some mistakes during his presidency in the United States, we believe in second chances here, so we give him the reins of Liberia. Finally, we could move forward to our ultimate objective of retaking America. However, I'm not delusional about my odds right now. Fighting all of America with 5 divisions and 9 factories ain't gonna go well, and we're gonna have to spend a lot of time building up for that final showdown because Hoover wasn't aware of this video sponsor, WeMod, a desktop application that allows you to adjust your single player games, enhance yourself, or use interactive maps in those games so you can play exactly how you want to play. If you're learning HOI4, you can use WeMod to give yourself the buffs you need to accomplish your goals or correct your mistakes. Or say you're like me and play a lot of modded HOI4 campaigns. When things break and you need to salvage the campaign, just hit Alt+W to open the WeMod in-game overlay and get the assistance you need. The thing I appreciate the most is the interactive maps, because when I played open world RPGs like Baldur's Gate 3 or Elden Ring and talked about it with my friends, I'd find out about a bunch of cool stuff I missed. So these maps are very good to make sure you're not missing out on content. Also, HOI4 isn't just for the really popular RPGs and strategy games like Baldur's Gate or HOI4. It works with over 3,500 single player games with no setup required because the app will find the games automatically. So, if you want some help while learning a game, make sure you're not missing out on good content or skip through content you don't like. Download HOI4 for free using my link hoimod.gg/thatguyfromcollege in the description. Now, let's get back to Hoover's wild ride. Big things were happening in Africa. Middle Africa had collapsed, which was really gonna shake up the situation around me. German West Africa also fell apart, and France swooped in to take a bunch more land, along with some new nations being released. In East Africa, a team was forming up to take down the tyrant Göring for good. Punished Göring has ambitions to reclaim his fallen empire, whatever the cost. Meanwhile, to the west, things are actually looking good for democracy, with the Pacific States of America making its way to the Mississippi and about to kill the American Union state. After they collapse, the Pacific States looks like it's in a great position to sweep over the opposition, but the Constitutional American Republic is making a big offensive along the East Coast, an offensive that looks like it will kill off the federal government faction. If the CAR can consolidate the East, they will be in a much stronger position than the Pacific States, since most of America's industry and manpower is east of the Mississippi. By the end of 1938, I finally get manpower as Liberia to start building up an army. I'm making some elite Marines as my main force, and I'm naming them after Patreons because that's a perk you get when you support me there. For their first taste of combat, I'm going to use them to shut down Göring's wild ride before he dominates all of Central Africa, so soon they will be deployed in Uganda. When they got to the front lines, they immediately got to work pushing through Göring's lines. Within their first few weeks of the job, they had already made their first encirclement, and although 2 divisions may not seem like much, Göring's army can't afford to replace many losses, so this will get the ball rolling against them. However, after that first offensive, things became a lot more difficult. The rugged terrain and bad infrastructure were already big obstacles to overcome, but when Göring reinforced the Lake Victoria front, the Liberian gains drastically slowed down. The front was narrow enough that Göring could easily reinforce any part of the front that was struggling against us. In April, things finally started going our way when the Kenya People's State started their own war against Göring. This forced him to pull away all those reinforcements that were fighting me, and I could start making moves again, dismantling the German front line. With that front destroyed, the end of Göring was in sight. He couldn't make another solid front line against me, and we raced forwards. While this was happening, some American exiles came up with an interesting flag for us to use, and I decided, screw it, let's roll with this new thing. Fighting in Africa takes a lot longer than you think. The Second Weltkrieg started while I'm still trying to finish off Göring's remnants. Even with the help of the Kenya, it wasn't until December 1939 that we took the capital and put an end to Göring. With the Entente at war with the Third International, I thought I'd try something a bit ballsy.
How about no?
I mean, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? I'm still gonna need that land, so I'm just gonna build up to take it by force. At least I'm able to get exiled generals from the defeated American factions and get some very good leaders to use. As my army expanded, I saw something I couldn't believe. Somehow, Göring returned. Also, the American Civil War has turned into a 1v1 of the PSA versus the CAR, and since they control more industry and manpower, it's clear that the CAR is gonna end up winning. So America is gonna end up being run by Southern Democrats. In January 1941, I scraped up all the manpower I could to make my army of 16 divisions and ready them to go into National France. I need their West African land to build up an industrial and manpower base to be able to invade the US. I'm gonna try my best to take care of these divisions, but I know it ain't gonna be easy. I'm gonna be fighting the whole Entente, which, while they are the weakest faction, are still gonna greatly outnumber me. I honestly didn't even have much of a plan. I was gonna push forward and take all of French sub-Saharan Africa, and hopefully after that impressive accomplishment, the Entente would just peace out. I did keep getting these events to peace out, but they only give you the one state mentioned in the event, so I had to keep fighting if I wanted everything. After my first month of almost free gains, the Entente reinforcements started rolling in to throw me back. Their infantry was a lot worse than mine, so I could handle them easily, but then the French started bringing in proper tank divisions across the Sahara to fight me, and I won't lie, was not happy to see that. Especially when we are just learning the concepts of anti-tank guns here. So those tanks are able to push into Niger and threaten all my gains in the area. However, I did pull off a good encirclement in Mali and could use those divisions to sweep eastwards to cut off the Trans-Saharan crossing. The main counter for us to use against the Entente tanks is the environment. It's hard for them to get fuel around here, so when they're low, we can spring our counterattacks and repel them. Unfortunately, I couldn't destroy any of the tank divisions here, but I'll take what I can get. With the French pouring in more and more men, I had needed more divisions to stop them, so I had to play really risky and put all my port garrisons on the front line, knowing that all it take was one naval invasion to kill me. It was worth it though. Quickly, we were able to encircle another massive amount of French troops in Mali. Although we'd taken our fair share of losses, we had dealt much more damage to the Entente nations. Now, you may look at my manpower and wonder if they're just gonna whittle me down, but Liberia does have decisions to get cores on all the West African lands, and these lands have way better populations than mine do, so if I can hold out long enough to get the compliance for these cores, I'll be okay. This was a lot easier said than done though. French forces would launch another attack to rescue their cut-off allies in Niger and Dahomey. I didn't want these men back in play, so I tried my best to counterattack, stop the rescue, and destroy the Entente units I had cut off. I had stripped forces from the Mauritanian front to make this happen, which the Entente would take advantage of by launching another attack and rolling over the few defenders I had left there. Those few divisions there had to do delaying tactics to buy time while we cored Sierra Leone and Guinea. In January 1942, the First Corps finished not a moment too soon. The divisions on the field hadn't gotten reinforcements in weeks, and it was showing. The Entente were threatening to cut the country in half soon, so I needed to finish up the Dahomey offensive. With no infrastructure in the area, I managed to kill those cut-off divisions quickly, and by February, we capitulated the government, getting us some much-needed anti-tank. Things were once again turning in my favor, so of course the game had to screw it up. Togoland joined the Entente, and when they joined, they took a bunch of West African land that was under my control. Having to fight around Dahomey again is one thing, but the Ivory Coast nonsense literally cuts off half my army. So in the interest of me actually being able to continue playing, I hope you guys can forgive me for transferring the occupation of the Ivory Coast back to myself. Unfortunately, the damage has already been done because my supply hub got disconnected and the AI was all over my poor out-of-supply troops. As French forces from the west closed in, it was clear that this area was unholdable and the troops had to fall back. But that didn't mean I wouldn't still try to fight around here regardless. There were still kills to be made. However, the constant combat and low supply became unsustainable for my tiny industry, and although we had the bodies now, we were starting to lack equipment. So I withdrew forces back to the Ivory Coast and formed a line in all the forests in the area so I could recover. Once in position, units could stock up on some much needed equipment and medals could be given out to those deserving of one. It wouldn't be long till Liberia could go on the offensive again, and with the underwhelming forces the Entente left to keep me in check, I knew we could do a lot better this time. In September, we launched an all-out offensive across the front, shattering the divisions in front of us with ease. I had to be very aggressive, constantly putting pressure on the Entente divisions before reinforcements arrived again so we could secure West Africa for good. In the middle of this, I see that New England has peaced out with us because they were annexed by the Constitutional American Republic. The Southerners had won and dominated the whole country. Little did they know, the Union still had one last hope. We just needed to beat the French first. The Sahara crossings were soon blocked off, and we have some unexpected Arab friends who are in their own war against the Entente, so they are pulling off pressure from their armies along with giving us trade routes that can't be raided. As we continue our liberation of West Africa, we eliminate many Entente soldiers from the fight, and we have left the French army so depleted that we can actually do our own crossing of the Sahara to bring the fight to Algeria. The end looked so close, so I eagerly pushed my Marines through the Algerian mountains. At the beginning, things were going great. We surrounded units south of Oran, and we were working on eliminating them. However, the eastern pincer was having more trouble due to less supply being available, so they stalled out quickly. I was still optimistic that they could meet up with the central pincer, but an unexpected counterattack turned this whole offensive around. The AI actually hit me with a backhand blow. I tried everything I could to get those Marines to hold out long enough to get rescued. I soon saved the 3 divisions in the desert, but there was too much Entente armor standing between me and the other 4 Marines in the mountains, so sadly, I had to watch them die. We were forced back a bit, but I still had some more pushing power to go north and take Oran. I heard news about the fall of Petrograd, which made me wonder how things were going in Europe, and I see that Germany is being given a much easier time by the Mongolian Empire eating up a bunch of Russia. After the fall of Oran, I made a gamble since I had so few divisions. I left the Saharan crossing very weak, basically letting the Entente cross again, so I could concentrate my divisions for a push along the coast of Algeria. The plan worked better than I thought because the AI sent a lot of troops to flood West Africa, and while they took empty deserts, I was taking strategic cities from them. You know, now that I think about it, with the way me and the Arabs are closing in on Tunisia, it low-key feels like Operation Torch. They are pushing up the coast while I clear out the mountains. My units are being pushed to their limits with the bad terrain and constant bombing, but I am in a bit of a time crunch to get this done. Once Constantine falls, the exiled French government finally taps out. Since I did the majority of the work killing them, I'm easily able to take over most of their land in the peace deal, along with their entire fleet, which I especially needed since I'm going to be doing big naval invasions. And fortunately, there is an event to peace out with the Entente with the fall of the French exiles. Reinvading America is going to be hard enough by itself. I don't need extra enemies while I do that. I will also not be finishing this part of the focus tree because doing so will give me a nasty minus 25% manpower modifier. This will cost me an extra research slot I would get at the end of the branch, but I really need that manpower, even if it means being stuck with 3 research slots for the rest of the game. Now that I'm in peace though, there is an issue I can finally take care of. We need to put Goring down for good this time. Fortunately, this isn't going to be too long of a side quest for me. His armies were overextended, so I was easily able to break through and push eastwards to Dar es Salaam. Once I reached the coast, most of my work was done, and I could trust the AI to clean up from there. Later on, the Mongols declared on Germany's Russian puppet. Germany won the Second Weltkrieg, and here comes Genghis Khan II to draw them into one last fight. I spent all of 1944 building up for the final showdown with the CAR. I was the Union's last hope. I had to be ready for this. I annexed Ghana in a quick war since they weren't in a faction, and I can eventually integrate their land, which has a great amount of manpower and industry. In February 1945, I finally feel ready to go in. I have 2 full armies of Marines that look like this, and I'm also getting 2 infantry armies that look like this. Declaring this late on America of all countries is definitely an interesting choice by me. I mean, they literally have more dockyards than I have factories, but just because they have better industry, manpower, technology, and are fighting on their home turf doesn't mean I don't have a chance, because I have a plan. Now, our agents have told us that the CAR has stationed a massive amount of troops in the northeast along the Canadian border. Operation Redcoat will have us landing around the major cities in New England. Speed is very important for this operation because we will have a brief window of chaos while the CAR is trying to organize their response. Once landed, the troops will need to move towards Albany to cut off the supplies to the CAR troops and move towards Buffalo to completely cut off the army. Reinforcing infantry will create defensive lines across New York and Pennsylvania while the cut-off troops are eliminated. After a long trip across the Atlantic, in April, the troops start reaching their landing spots. Right as we touch down in Massachusetts, we get an event to reach out to the German Empire for an alliance. Considering I know what it's like to fight late game majors with a better AI mod, I know I'm gonna need all the help I can get. As for the landings, Boston and Providence are the first ports to fall, so we can quickly storm Massachusetts. I try to get a move on to Albany as fast as possible because CAR troops are already responding to my invasion. Germany did let us join the Reichspakt, so we will have a lot of friends to back us up soon. However, things were not going that great since I wasn't able to take Albany and they already have a sizable amount of divisions on me. You see, there was one big thing that I didn't account for in this operation: the weather. Winter lasted a stupid amount of time this year. I'm talking, it is May and it is still snowing everywhere. And of course, with all these troops being in Africa for so long, they're not used to the cold at all. We form a beachhead from Boston to New York City, but they are constantly slamming us with tanks and bombers. After a while, they push us out of Boston, and from there, it is clear we need to be thinking about our exit strategy. One army evacuated out of Providence, while the other one mostly pulled out of New York City. I tried to leave some guys behind to fortress up in the city, but they were kicked out of there very fast. At least we had allies in the Western Hemisphere to recover in. Upon reflection, my main problem in that naval invasion was that I spread out my landing spots too much, so for my next attempt, I made sure they were all next to each other, and I focused more on the easier landing spots. When they hit the shores, I feel like they had a much easier time landing, which was great because I could immediately start pushing for my secondary goals. Albany fell extremely fast, and that made the northern AR divisions unable to do a proper counterattack. At this point in the previous invasion, we barely pushed out of Connecticut, and now we have Marines reaching the shores of Lake Ontario. While the CAR forces are weak, I kept pushing as much as I can, eventually even liberating the city of Philadelphia. By the end of October, the enemy has sent a sizable army to face my Marines, but fortunately my infantry had also just arrived to reinforce those Marines. The Dixie armor drives me out of Philadelphia before I can reinforce them, and we're forced to retreat through New Jersey. At least the cutoff units in the north are being handled, so they have no chance of being saved. Dixie forces would spend the rest of fall hammering my Liberian troops. They focused mainly on the coast, eventually forcing me out of Newark. In upstate New York, my troops held better, and although some land was lost, we held onto the strategic city of Albany. However, just when things looked contained in the winter, the CAR pulled off a shocking move and crossed the Hudson River, completely cutting off New York City from the rest of the Liberian army. Just barely, I managed to stop them in front of Hartford, which really needed to hold because if they took that city, they'd have the supply they needed to roll over the rest of New England. They committed way too many divisions to take Hartford, and I saw my opportunity. The west bank of the Hudson was really light on troops, so I was gonna push there to cut off everything in Connecticut. Fighting in the forest wasn't easy, but Newark was. However, the AI is just pulling off some BS and constantly pinning me with zero org divisions to slow me down. I do eventually get into the city, which deprives them of a very important supply hub. From there, my troops push along the Hudson River, being constantly hit at the sides by troops trying to stop me. However, it isn't enough and my Marines managed to link up. We got ourselves a great catch in Connecticut. Over 50 divisions, including a dozen tank divisions. The final tally is over 600,000 dead. You may think a victory like this would shift the momentum in my favor, but you'd be wrong. The CAR has the equipment to just walk that off, and I'm still stuck in a stalemate in New England. However, there is hope with my German allies. They are preparing a massive naval invasion around Philadelphia, and I want to make the most of it. The Constitutional American Republic have massed a lot of troops in New Jersey, so my plan is to launch an offensive from upstate New York into Pennsylvania to eventually link up with the German troops that will land in Philadelphia. When they do eventually land, I reinforce them with some Marines because I really need that city to hold. However, the road to that city is not an easy one to walk down, despite being so close. We got reduced to going slower than a World War I pace here. It took us 2 months of constant combat to be able to take the single tile that would link us up. When it finally happened, I breathed the biggest sigh of relief. I had my eyes glued on these few tiles for at least 10 minutes. It was all worth it though. Looking at that final haul in Atlantic City, we got 70 divisions this time, over 800,000 men gone in that city. This was a sizable chunk of their army taken out. They had lost almost all their armor divisions and mainly rely on these mechanized divisions that they couldn't even fully equip. It has been bloody for both sides though. I have lost well over 1 million men, but we've inflicted way more casualties on the Constitutional American Republic. I remembered after that I have a spirit that gives me more equipment capture. So I checked my stockpile to see the massive amount of American equipment I've captured over time, and I figured it's time this country finally got a tank division. The stats here are lying by the way because I haven't researched armor tech. The Germans tried another landing around Washington DC, but since it was so close to the front line, it was a very crowded area. No matter what I did, the troops in Baltimore weren't breaking, and the German Liberian troops could only take so much in the city. Eventually, we were forced to completely evacuate DC. However, the CAR wasn't done there. They did another massive counterattack against me in Pennsylvania, pushing me out of Philadelphia and Harrisburg. They did another blitz through New Jersey, but fortunately were stopped with the timely arrival of Liberia's 1st Armored Division. Low-key got set back to step 1, but at least the Germans were already planning another naval invasion of Philadelphia. I pushed forward a bit while they're planning to ready myself to meet the Germans. Just enough for me to be able to reach them quickly, but not too close that the CR could immediately redeploy to fight the Germans. Everything went great. The Germans quickly took Baltimore, DC, and Delaware while I sliced through eastern Pennsylvania. Eventually, we linked up outside of Philadelphia and worked together to take it. Once again, a huge amount of CAR troops were doomed to die in New Jersey. But the damage wasn't going to end there. My troops in eastern and western Pennsylvania met up soon afterwards to encircle another army's worth of CR troops in central Pennsylvania. When all those pockets were killed, we had dealt an unrecoverable amount of damage to the Dixie government. After dealing 12 million casualties. We now had a larger army than they did. However, they still have a lot of industry, so I need to keep up the pressure so they can't recover. The next move would be to encircle as many troops as we could in the Appalachian Mountains before they escape. After a month and a half, we stretched out their lines enough that we could get another decent sized pocket. A whole army is once again killed off, and the Constitutional American Army is reduced to around 70 divisions. At this point, it's pretty much GG. I could put all my divisions in one front line and set them to work. Right after that, the Reichspakt finally defeated the Mongolian Empire, so there are a lot of divisions that are about to be freed up. Pretty soon, there is a great migration going across the Atlantic, and if I was the CAR right now, I'd just surrender. However, they dragged on this war for the next year, fighting me for every state. And honestly, this is on me, because I'm kicking myself looking at the footage, wondering why I didn't make a single collab government against them. Would have literally saved me a whole hour of walking through the United States. Eventually, in July 1949, my troops crossed the country to enter California and end this war for good. 15.75 million casualties to stop me, Jesus Christ. But all that pain was worth it. Congratulations to all the patrons who made it to the end of the video. I took care of most y'all. Now we can finally do the Focus Hoover's America and get our guy officially back in charge. Now, as tempting as it is to go after all our former land, I think I've done enough for one campaign. I hope y'all enjoyed this wild ride, and if you did, give the video a like so other people will see it too. Thank you to WeMod for sponsoring this video. If you want more control over your experience in single player games, check out my link in the description and download it for free. And a final shout out to my wonderful alumni on Patreon. Remember, if you want to fight for me as a division in one of these HOI4 videos and fun good content, support me there. You'll definitely see your name when I make a video on the next HOI4 DLC. Anyways, that's all for now. There's a lot of new stuff coming out this month that I can't wait to show you, so I hope to see y'all again for it. Bye bye!